My name is Sinéad Burke and I'm here this afternoon with Linda Allen for Lust for Life. I recently came across Linda's article talking about her experiences with her son. I was fascinated, heartbroken, inspired and left completely emotional and really wanted to learn more. Linda, thank you so much for joining me in this beautiful space today.
Actually, thank you.
I guess my first question is, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to be featured on Lust for Life.
Yes, well, I am a mother of two and an older daughter who's now 22 and a son, Dara, who would be coming up to 19 now. And unfortunately, Dara chose to end his life some 3.5 years ago, and actually probably nearer to 4. And so my whole life changed then from being a mother of two teens, working a couple of part-time jobs to keep it all going, jobs which I quite enjoyed, but nonetheless it was all very busy, and houses with teenagers are very busy, and then suddenly it became a very different picture. So I was left kind of as a parent asking the difficult question, the very many difficult questions which are unceasing actually, but I was left with no real answer. Why is not a great question when you don't know the answer and you're not likely to get it? So I was a journaler from a very young age. About 9, I decided that I liked my nice shiny book and I was going to write stuff down. And journaling got me through a lot of the pain of the loss and separation that you feel when somebody leaves you like that, particularly so suddenly. So I decided then one night, sitting up late, sleep was obviously a bit of an issue for a while, and I decided one night that the last words he said to me were actually, if they weren't so tragic, were very poignant, and I thought they'd make a nice chapter title. So I played around with that idea, and a couple of nights later I wrote down the words, "See you in 2 minutes, ma," and I started to write underneath that, and it just felt different. I knew there was something forming, and decided that would be great to follow, because I didn't know where it would bring. I didn't know if it was going to heal me or others or both, and it turns out it's likely that it's both.
And what's been the most, surprising part of that journey so far, in terms of from the moment you wrote that chapter headline to now, today?
It's just extraordinary how things can actually fall into place a little bit. I wrote and wrote and wrote, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. And then I tried to send it to a few publishers, but it still was very naive. There's a whole world I knew nothing about. But in the middle of all that, I met a friend of my brother's who is a criminologist there and had done a PhD in Trinity, and we were doing a PhD herself. But he read what I wrote, my first few chapters, and absolutely loved it and said, "I'd really like to help you." And he said, "I haven't published any books, but my brother has, and maybe I can help." But he was like the solid force behind that kept saying, "No, this is not just for you and I, you've got to keep this got to get out there, I really believe in this." And what I loved about him was his language. He's very academic and I'm very emotive, and I love the fact that we spoke different dialects, if you like, but he really understood what I was saying.
Was this commonality?
It was a commonality. It was touching a human emotion, and he used to say, "I'm not made of stone, I am emotional," but it was something was really pulling him, really grabbing him, and I felt then that was possible for other people.
But that whole idea of sharing your experiences, for me, sometimes I write about my experiences of being a little person, and often the people I'm fearful most of reading it are those closest to me.
Yes.
And setting it out into the big bad world is kind of a little less nerve-wracking than sending it to my parents and my family and my friends.
I agree.
Were you nervous about putting that much honesty and emotion and rawness to those closest to you?
Yes, absolutely. They were the people I worried about most, you're right. Especially I kept sending my daughter drafts going, "Okay, this might get published," and she was like, "Yeah, right," but then it eventually did. So, and I crowdfunded and self-published, which was all a whole new experience as well, which was wonderful. But that said, your question it was very daunting. And even now still, sometimes I realise, I was so worried about my parents reading it. They're a different generation. We didn't speak that much about emotion, and it's all over it.
Yeah.
But they were absolutely amazed. They have different ways. My mother took herself away. She took a couple of 2 sittings and read the whole thing. And now she's one of my best PR people. So it's really great, but it's also very daunting.
And as regards to the piece that you initially put up on Lust for Life, the reaction was astounding and huge. Is there anything that's particularly poignant about that process and about the feedback that you got that still remains with you?
It's just wonderful to feel that people can relate to what I'm saying, and it's wonderful that even in pain that you can reach out and help somebody feel better about their story. And I have to keep reminding myself that my story does help, because every now and again I feel like, do I need to give something more than just my story? And possibly yes, and I often do, but it's more about, I'm amazed that telling a story from a place of such depth and rawness can actually really help other people. Many have said they didn't know how to put words on the feelings. They had the feelings. Or many have said, oh God, I didn't like going to the grave either, but I didn't like to say that because people expect you to go. So it's lots of little incidentals you don't even realise might be the piece that somebody holds on to. And I love that. I'm fascinated by that, by what people say is the bit that helped them.
When you were going through the process, you being a vehicle and, I suppose a piece for change for others, what helped you?
Lots of things helped me. I'm very blessed that I have great friends around me, and they were incredibly supportive. They thought of wonderful things to help me. But also what helped me was years and years of self-development, personal development. I kind of worked around that area for most of my life, so beginning in education with children and bringing it up to adults. But that was great because I knew that I could change how I looked at the situation. I couldn't change the fact that Dara's gone. And no matter what tantrums I had, and I had plenty, shouting and roaring and throwing pillows and trying to, express that I couldn't change, I wouldn't bring him back. So the only thing I could change is what I did with it. And I am a silver lining kind of person, so I really looked for that. And I found things like nature, which I've always loved. It's the most natural thing, it's there, it's at our disposal. And it just, for me, gave me great comfort. There are days where I just knew I had to go by the sea.
It offers a reprieve.
Totally. And to stand with your back against a tree and just let yourself be there and just, it sounds so almost cliche, but to just let yourself be there with the tree and just breathe. Absolutely. And some days that's all I was able for. It's like, I just need to be here and breathe right now.
But not kind of challenging yourself on that you need to do more. But you've just said there, what wonderful feedback you've had from people and how they relate to so much and kind of feel comforted by your own words. But do you feel a sense of responsibility now? Is that kind of tinged with an element of nervousness? Because it would be for me.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. Yeah, there is that. When the book went out, I felt really responsible. I think the time I felt most responsibility was when I had a funded campaign going. That's when I thought, oh my good Lord, I'm responsible to people I don't even know who've invested in me and my words. Do I believe in them enough? Now, the next level of responsibility is, I'm putting out a story and it's really raw and being really vulnerable. Is it actually going to do anything for anybody? And I sort of feel like, sometimes I feel a bit guilty that it mightn't. Or I feel like, surely there's more. There's always this feeling of I can do more. And the doing more, I'm not quite sure is. People say just being as well as I am, as healthy as I am in the loss of my son is actually testament in itself. So yes, I kind of know that the space you're talking about, it's like, oh my gosh, what now?
You feel like you're on this element of a pedestal and you may not have put yourself there, but you've landed there and what's next, really?
Yeah, well, that's the question, what's next and how can I make this more? And that's why I'm trying to do some more engagement, speaking engagements and speaking to people and answering questions that people have. Because I'm not afraid to go there. It doesn't matter what question you ask, I'm not afraid to go there. And people like that honesty. People are fascinated. It's sort of a human quality. People are fascinated by honesty at the level that I express it. People have said to me a number of times, how can you be so honest? But it's not that I'm honest, it's just that I know how to language my feelings.
And how to frame it and put it in a setting and a space.
Yeah.
And we're sadly coming to the end of our time together, and I've really loved meeting you and listening to you. But if you had to pick one moment in the array of moments that exist, what are you most proud of in your journey so far?
Oh gosh, that's a big question to finish on. What am I most proud of? I'm probably most proud of being a mother who's able to tell the story with an inspirational aspect. I guess I'm most proud of myself, that I have been able to, in the middle of all this, follow this thread of a book that became, I guess I like the fact that I'm able to go with something, trust myself, follow it, go where it brings me without really knowing in advance. So I guess it's living with the uncertainty and living with the rawness and pain and making it okay. You know, making myself have a good life, helping myself have a good life, and hopefully other people know, no matter how hard something is, there's always a way to make it better.
Linda, thank you so much.
You're
It was such a treat to speak with Linda Allen this afternoon. You can read some of Linda's thought-provoking work on Lust for Life and find out more about her book there.